Hi, welcome to my video on review 2 of polynomial functions. And this review is on the videos numbers 12 to 28. And like all reviews, you can do it as a quiz where you're going to give yourself a score. And this quiz is out of 52. So add up all your pages and put it over 52. Divide 52 into your numerator. Get a decimal, move your decimal 2 places to the right. And you'll have your percentage. Okay, here we go. Let's do the review. Again, you can pause your video for each question, work each question out first if you wish. Find the quotient and remainder of 6x cubed minus 7x squared plus 3x minus 4 is divided by x minus 2. And we're going to do long division. So it's x minus 2 divided into, we have a 6x cubed minus 7x squared plus 3x minus 4. So when we divide x into 6x cubed, we get 6x squared. So we put the x squared above the x squared to keep them lined up. Multiply back, 6x cubed minus 12x squared. Because we're dividing, we add on the opposite. That's a plus, we make it a minus. That's a minus, so we make it a plus. Positive 6, negative cancels out. Negative 7, that's a plus there. Opposite of negative is a positive. So negative 7 plus 12 is 5x squared. Bring down your next term, which is positive 3x. X into 5x squared is positive 5x. Multiply back. 5x squared. 5x times negative 2 is negative 10x. Draw a line. That's a positive, we make it a negative. That's a negative, we make it a positive. So positive 5, negative 5 cancels out. And positive 3, positive 10 is 13x. Bring down your next term, which is negative 4. X into 13x is plus 13. Multiply. 13x. And that's a negative 26. And positive becomes a negative. Negative becomes a positive. And that cancels out. Negative 4 plus 26 is 22. So you did all that work. So the quotient, you can call it the q of x if you want. The quotient is on the top, 6x squared plus 5x plus 13. And remainder is r, and the remainder is 22. So if you got both of these correct, give yourself 2 marks. Find the polynomial p of x. If divided by x, 2x minus 1, the quotient is x squared minus 3x plus 2. Remainder is 6. So the p of x is equal to the quotient times the divisor plus r, which is the remainder. It could be r of x, I'm just calling it r. So the quotient is x squared minus 3x plus 2, and the divisor is 2x minus 1, and the remainder we're going to add on as r. Multiply that out, and we multiply. We're going to use the FOIL distributive property. So x squared times 2x is 2x cubed. X squared times negative 1, negative x squared. Then we're going to take the negative 3x and multiply by these two. So that's a negative 6x squared. And negative 3x times negative 1 is a plus 3x. Then we're going to multiply 2 by both this binomial. So that gives me a 4x minus 2 and plus 6. And now we have add up the like terms. So 2x cubed minus 7x squared plus 7x plus, and that's a negative 2, so that's a plus 4. And that's the binomial, or sorry, that's the polynomial that represents, so if we took 2x minus 1 divided into this polynomial, you get this remainder on the top like this, and you get you get this quotient on the top, which is this one, and you get a remainder right here, which is 6. And now, so another way to do division, which we find very quick to do, is to do synthetic division. So I have it written down, so we want to do the synthetic division on this. So -3, we bring down to 2. -3 times 2 is -6. Add, we get a 1. -3 times 1 is -3. Add is -4. -3 times -4 is 12. Add, we get a 5. So that's the synthetic division. Give yourself a mark. Oh, forgot. If you ended up with this trinomial, give yourself 2 marks. And you get 1 mark if you have this trinomial multiplied by the binomial plus 6, so you get a mark for this line. If you multiply it correctly, you get a mark, so 2. If you have the remainder is 5. So we do the synthetic division, the remainder is on the end. And the depressed equation, or the polynomial quotient, is not a depressed equation because it's not equal to 0. So this is the quotient when you do your division. So the remainder is 5, give yourself a mark. Now we have this synthetic division lined out here, all done for you, so just check. We have a 2, bring in your 2, 4 times 2 is 8, 5, multiply, 20, add 3, 4 times 3 is 12, add 18. So we're going to do this in terms of x. So the polynomial, remember that's a constant, that's x squared, that's x cubed. So the polynomial is 2x cubed minus 3x squared minus 17x plus 6. The divisor is a 4, but we have to take the minus 4, because when we divide, we do synthetic division, we have to take the opposite of the constant. That's right here. It's like letting x minus 4 equals 0 and say x is 4. When you put 4 in here, you get a 0. Think of it that way. And the quotient is, that's an x cubed, so this is an x squared, so it's 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. So the quotient is right here. And the remainder is 18. Remainder is, like the remainder here is 5, remainder here is 18. So because that's the remainder here, that's a constant, that's a linear, that's a quadratic. So that's 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. If you got each one of these, give yourself a mark. Total of 9 for the page. Let's continue. Don't forget to pause your video and work each of these out. Let's do this division here by the synthetic division. So we're going to do synthetic division. We have a 3, so we need a minus 3. We do the opposite. And we have a 4, 3. Oh, notice I have 0x squared is missing. So I have a 6 and I have a 20. I have to put the 0 in. If I don't, it's going to be wrong. You won't get the correct answer. And so we have, again, x to the 4th, x cubed, x squared. So the 0 goes in. Draw a line. And bring down the 6. Negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. Add is 2. Multiply. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Oop, negative 6 right here, my mistake. So that's negative 6 when I add. And when you multiply here, you get a positive. That's a positive 18. And add, you get 16. And negative 3 times negative 16 is a negative 48. So you get, add that up, is 56 negative. So your quotient, which is the q of x, the quotient is, remember this is x to the 4th, so this is an x cubed, so this is 6x cubed plus 2x squared minus 6x plus 16. And it said it wants the remainder, so r, big R or small r, is negative 56. So if you did this division, laid it out like this with a minus 3, then give yourself a mark for laying it out, and give yourself a mark for the quotient, give yourself a mark for the remainder, 3 altogether. says here, the p of x equals x cubed plus 4x squared minus 3x plus 2. Find a p of negative 2. So the p of negative 2 means you're subbing negative 2 in the place of x. So we take our time, sub negative 2 in the place of x. So what I'm going to do here is work out each term and then add and subtract at the end. So negative 2 cubed is negative 8. I square first to get 4. 4 times 4 is 16. I'm working out each term. And I get negative 3, negative 2 is a plus 6, and plus 2. So that's 8. That's 8 right there, so that's 16. So the p of negative 2 is 16. If you have 16, give yourself a mark. Number 7. If x minus 4 is a factor of the p of x, then the p of 4 is, so a factor. So if you sub 4 into the polynomial, so that's x minus 4. So if you sub 4 in, then you'll get a remainder of 0. So if this is a factor, subbing it into the polynomial, you get a remainder of 0. Or if you did synthetic division, you get a remainder of 0 here. So factor, opposite of the x minus 4, 4, you get a 0. Give yourself a mark. Find k when 6x cubed minus x squared minus 2kx minus 1 is divided by x minus 1, and the remainder is 8. So when we divide, so that means if we divide by this, we get a remainder of 8. So that means if I sub, that's x minus 1. So if I sub the opposite, which is 1, so if I sub 1 into this expression for x, so that's like the p of 4 and the p of 3. So if it's a factor and you sub it in, you get a 0. But now, when I divide here, I'm subbing in 1, and I get a remainder. Subbing it in, I get a remainder of 8. And remember that the p, if you take an expression, if you divide this expression by x minus a, then the p of a is equal to the remainder. And if the p of a, if it's a factor, then the remainder is 0. So here the remainder is 8. So I work each term out. 1 cubed is 1. I get a 6. 1 squared minus 1. Negative 2k minus, I'm going to put an 8 there then, minus 1 equals 8. Simplify 2k. Negative 2k is, that's a 6, 1, so that's a plus 4 equals 8. So negative 2k is 8 minus 4. Negative 2k equals 4. And they divide by negative 2. So k becomes negative 2. So if you sub the 1 in like this and wrote this equation down, perfect. If you solved it out to get negative 2, you get another mark, 2 marks altogether. Number 9, is x minus 1 a factor of this expression? Well, a factor means that if you do synthetic division, so I'm going to do it 2 ways. You can either sub 1 in, that's x minus 1. So I'm subbing the opposite of 1. I'm doing 1 in here. So if I do 1 like this, there's the 1. So when I sub 1 in here, I should get a remainder of 0. So that's a 1. And that's 1 cubed is 1, that's an 8. 1 squared is 1, that's a 3. And that's 1 times, negative 7 times 1 is negative 7. And 5, that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 9. So notice when I sub it in, I'm doing the same as here. I'm working out the p of 1. So that's what you call the p of 1. I'm subbing 1 in, I get a remainder of 0. So yes, it is a factor because the remainder is 0. Or you could also take the 1 and work it out by synthetic division, and you'll get a 0 remainder at the end, right at the bottom. So when you get a 0 here in synthetic division, that means this number is a root, a 0, or an intercept, or the opposite, x plus 1 is a factor. So if you give yourself a mark if you said yes, because you got a zero remainder when you subbed it in. Find the value of k if x plus 2 is a factor of this. So if x plus 2 is a factor, that means if I sub it in, x plus 2, I'm subbing in minus 2 in the place of x. So put a minus 2 in the place of x. So when you sub a minus 2 in, that means it's a factor. Then you get a zero remainder. So you work each of this out, solve for k. So it's negative 2 cubed is negative 8. Negative 2 squared is 4, so it's a negative 4k. And negative 2 times 2k is negative 4k. Minus 16 equals 0. And we add up the like terms, negative 8k minus 24 equals 0. Negative 8k equals positive 24. Divide by negative 8, and k becomes negative 3. So if you subbed in the negative 2 and wrote 0 equals to 0 here, there's a mark. If you work this out to negative 3, there's a mark. So 2 marks altogether. Total of 10 for that page. Okay. Hopefully your review is going okay and you understand the videos that we've done so far. Number 11. This is related to intercepts, zeros, and roots. The zero of a polynomial. The zeros of a polynomial are the blank of an equation equal to 0. So the answer is the zeros of a polynomial are the roots of an equation equal to 0. And they are the x-intercepts of the graph. So they're all related. They're all the same number. Give yourself 1 mark for roots and 1 mark for x-intercepts, 2 altogether. And in this one, state each. The x-intercepts of this graph. The x-intercepts are negative 5, 1, and 3. I just make it equal to 0 and solve it. So what's the opposite of plus 5? Minus 5. Because when you put a minus 5 in here, you'll get a 0. So if you put a minus 5 here and a minus 5 here, this will be a 0, and 0 times these two will be 0. If you put a negative 1 here, then you get a 0. So if you put a negative 1 here, you get you put 1 here, you get a 0. Put a 1 here, you get a 6. Put a 1 here, you get negative 2. But 0 times those two numbers is still 0. And so the x-intercepts are negative 5, 1, and 3. And in relation to the graph, this is because it's a square, that'll bounce off or be a parabola. It intersect and bounce off. But the x-intercepts that lies on the x-axis are these 3 numbers. Give yourself a mark. The roots of this equation, again, you do the opposite. 4. And here you go, it's negative 2 divided by 3. In other words, if you go 3x plus 2 equals 0, 3x equals negative 2, and divide by 3, x is equal to 2 over 3. So you move this over, make it a minus, and divide by 3. You move the 4 over, negative 4, you get a plus. Move the negative 6 over, you get a 6. So those are the roots of this equation. Roots are the values that make the equation equal to 0. Give yourself a mark. Zeros of a polynomial. Notice we have the x-intercept of a graph, we have the roots of an equation equal to 0, and we have the zeros of a polynomial. And the zeros are the values of x that make this 0. So it's negative 4 and 2. And again, note, in terms of the graph, this is a power of 3, so it's an s that comes sideways s in the graph. But the zeros are, and there's actually, if you think about it, there's 3 negative 4s, but negative 4 and 2 are the zeros, 1 mark each, but there's 3 negative 4s. Number 13, list the integral or possible roots of this. So notice that this is a 1. So because this is a 1, then all this is, if you think about it, this is p. P is negative 9. So that's plus minus 1, 3, and 9. Q is 1. So if Q is 1, That's plus minus the factors of 1. So P over Q comes out to be 139 divided by 1. So if you divide by 1, you get 1, 3, and 9. Again, because a is 1, we're dividing by 1, so this is the integral roots. The factors of negative 9 are going to be the possible roots of this equation because you have a 1 there. So because that's a 1, I can say integral. Is negative 2 an integral root of this? Well, one way to do it is to sub it in or do synthetic division. Negative 1 is an integral root if you're, let's see, so if you put negative 2 to the 4th plus 3 negative 2 squared minus 7 negative 2 plus 4, just negative 2 to the 4th, 3x, just making sure. Perfect. And that's a 16, that's a 4, that's a 12, and that's a 14, and that's a 4. And that's, notice, they add up to be 16, that's 18, 30, that's a 46. Is it? No. Why? Because when you sub this in, like you're subbing in the P of negative 2, you get a remainder of 46. So the P of negative 2 has to be equal to 0. This is not a 0. The remainder is not 0. So if you get 46 and say no, then you have 1 mark. List all the possible rational roots. So this is where you do P is 6, Q is 2. So that's plus or minus. 6 is 1, 2, 3, and 6. 1 times 6, 2 times 3. The factors of 2 are 1 and 2. So the rational roots is P divided by Q. Notice Q this time is a 2. So you got plus minus 1, 2, 3, and 6 divided by 1 and 2. Notice I only wrote 1 plus minus, so we worked that out. Plus minus, here we go. So take all these and divide by 1. So when you divide by 1, they 1, 2, 3, 6. When you divide by 2, 1 divided by 2 is a half. 2 divided by 2 is 1 is already there. 6 divided by 2, not there. Sorry, 3 divided by 2 is not there. 6 divided by 2 is 3, that's there. So these are all the possible rational roots. Rational is a fraction. Remember, integers are rational. Like an integer of 6 is 6 over 1, it's still rational. But if you've got a fraction, like 2/3, then that's not an integer. So these are all the rational roots, possible rational roots, plus minus all of these. So if you have this, give yourself a mark. 8 for the page. Okay, let's continue. Is 1/3 a root of this equation? Notice this is an equation, 1/3 is a root. So one way is I could sub 1/3 in and work it out. But if I do synthetic division, I got 3, 2, 1. I got to make sure they're all there. 3, negative 4, negative 5, and 2. So if I do synthetic division, and this remainder here is 0, then that's a root. Or I could sub in 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and work it out to see if I get a 0. So bring down your 3, multiply. 1. 1/3 times 3 is 1, add, negative 3. 1/3 of negative 3 is negative 1, add, negative 6. 1/3 of negative 6 is negative 2, I got a 0. So my remainder is 0, so 1/3, yes, is a root. Give yourself a mark. Find K if negative 3 over 2 is the root of this equation. So we can, because it's a root, then the remainder is going to be equal to 0. So probably to just put, because I'm working down for K, I'm going to sub the negative 2/3, negative 3 over 2 in, And just take your time, negative 3 over 2, and it's a square. Gotta just be careful. So we got, notice when we sub it in, the p of negative 3 over 2 is equal to the remainder. This is equal to the remainder. Then the remainder is equal to 0. Not because this is an equation equal to 0, but when I sub this in, that means it's going to be remainder is equal to 0. And we work these out. We get a negative 3 to the 4th power is 81 over 4th power of 2 is 16. Got to be careful now. That's a 16. And I have the power, so that's a negative 27 over 8. So I'm just working out the power right now, just because I got fractions. So that's 9 over 4 when I square it. And I'm going to leave this multiplication here till I'm just working out the exponents, just to make sure. I'm trying to find the value of k, because the remainder is equal to 0. So 2 times that is 81. 2 into 16 goes 8. And we have positive 27 over 8. And 2 into 2, that's 9 over 2. And 2 and 3, so that's a negative, that's a 3, so that's a negative 9k. Plus 9 equals 0. Now, if I want, I can multiply through by 8. If I multiply, because I have fractions, multiply by 8, I get 81, 27, 4 9s are 36, 8 9s are 72k, 8 9s are plus 72 equals 0. So I have a negative 72k, and I'm going to add all these up. So if I have 81 and 27, that's 108. And I have a 36 and a 72, I have 108. So that's a positive 216. So negative 72k equals negative 216. So k is negative 216 divided by negative 72. And we'll 72 divide into that nicely. 3. Looks like it goes to 3. Let's see. 72 times 3. Yep. It's a plus 3. So all that work for 2 marks because you're subbing it in. Remember, if you had a synthetic division, well, it handles a little bit different because of the k, but it will work. So if you subbed it in and got down as far as right here, give yourself a mark. If you got the answer, give yourself a mark. 2 altogether. So a little bit of work on that one. State the number of roots into this expression. That's equal to 0. So into this, roots are in an equation. So we have descending order. We have x to the 4 plus 8x cubed plus 4x squared plus 5x minus 1 equals 0. So the highest power is 4. So the number of roots into this is 4. You got 4 roots. And some of them could be triples or doubles, but there are 4 roots. So if we got 4, give yourself a mark. Now you didn't have to write descending order, you just had to look for, that's a 1, 2, as a constant, as a 4 and a 3. So all you had to do is look at it and say the highest power is 4, so there's 4 roots. You didn't have to do descending order. Number 19. Negative 2 and 1 are roots of this equation. Find the other. So let's do, if I plug the negative 2 in for x, it'll give me a 0, only verifying as a root. So what I'm going to do is do the synthetic division on the negative 2. So I got 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, so they're all there. 1, negative 3, negative 38, negative 24, 64. Draw a line, bring down your 1. Negative 2. Multiply, negative, add, negative 5. Multiply is a 10. Add, negative 28. Multiply, negative 56. And add. I got an error here. Because negative 2 is supposed to be a root of this equation. Did I write it down right? Yep. 1, negative 2, negative 5, 10, negative 28. Oh, positive 56. I knew I was supposed to get a 0 here. So that's that's a 32, negative 64. Or wondering. I thought I set it up. But when I multiplied here, I put a minus. It should have been a plus. So negative 2 is the root. Now we got a depressed equation. So now we're going to put 1 in. So the depressed equation is 1, negative 5, negative 28, and 32. That's the remainder 0 right there. So that tells me that negative 2 is a root. Now we're bring down to 1, multiply to get 1, add, negative 4. Multiply, negative 4. Add, negative 32. Multiply, negative 32. And again, we got a remainder of 0. Good. So I knew they were roots if I set up everything okay. So they are because you get remainder zeros. Now I have x squared minus 4x minus 32 equals 0. This is a quadratic. And if it's not factorable, then I have to use the quadratic formula. X and x. Factors of 32, they give me a 4. I see an 8 times 4. And the product is negative and sum is negative, so it must be negative 8 plus 4. Multiply, negative 32. Add, negative 4. Remember, 32 got factors of like 32 times 1, 2 times 16. So those are the factors, but these are the two factors that work. So x minus 8 equals 0, so x is 8. X plus 4 equals 0, so x is negative 4. So the other roots are 8 and a negative 4. Give yourself 4 marks, 1 for this, working out this depressed equation, because it's equal to 0. 1 for dividing here and getting this depressed equation, and 1 for writing this down and getting, so 1 here, and then 1 for each answer. 4 marks altogether, a total of 8. And we got so many more questions to do. I had quite a few videos to go through, but again, to do the reviews helps you understand. State the number of possible roots of this that are positive and negative. So that's using Descartes' rule. So the positive roots, how many sign changes? No, 1, 2, only 2. So we got 2 positives or 0 positives because they go down by 2. Let's check the negative. So negative, I got to put a negative x here. So we'll put a negative x here in 4th power. I get a positive times a positive is a positive. I put a negative x here. I get a negative. Negative x here, I get a positive times a negative is a negative. Negative x here, I get a negative. And put a negative, so I put a negative x here, and here, and work out the signs. Plus, minus, 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 plus. Sign changes is 1, 2. So we got 2 negatives or 0 negatives. So we got 2, 0, 2, 0. Everything's okay. Just checking that now. Put a negative x here. 4th power is positive. Negative x here is negative. Negative x here. Look what? I put a negative x here and squared it, and I got a positive, right? That's right. Thought I made a mistake, so I got 2. If you got 0, 2 here, 2, 0 here, and 2, 0 here, give yourself a mark each, 2 marks. State the number of possible roots of this that are imaginary. So that means we got to go through positive, negatives, imaginary, and total. So let's check Descartes' rule again. 3, 2, and I didn't. Is this in descending order? Yes. 4, 3, 2, 1. Everything is there. So I didn't check to see descending order and if they're all in, because if they're not all in, you got to fill them in with a 0. So they're all there. And this is 3, 2, 1 constant. They're all there. So 1 change, no change. So that's a 2 and a 0. Now let's put a negative. Negative x cubed is negative. Negative x squared is positive, so that's a negative. Put a negative x here and I get a positive. Plus 8. So no change, 1 change, no change. So I got 1 possible negative. So I got 1 negative. So if I got 2 positives and 1 negative, I got the total is 3 roots. So I have no imaginaries. And remember, the total is 3 because the highest power is 3. So I got 0, 1, so I must have 2 imaginaries. So the number of imaginary roots are 0 or 2. Now you might say, well, the imaginary roots got to come in pairs, so there's either none, or is it 2, or 4, or 6, etc. But in this particular problem, there's 0 or 2 imaginary roots. And if you work this out like this, give yourself 2 marks. Complete the statement. Every odd degree polynomial equation has blank 1 real root. And the word is every odd degree. So x, x cubed, x to the 5th, x to the 7th has, the key word is, has at least. Every odd degree polynomial, x to the 1, x cubed, x to the 5, has at least 1 real root. Reason is because if they're even, they come in pairs. And if they come in pairs, imaginary numbers are in pairs of 0, none, 2, 4. So if they're even, you possibly have no real roots. You have all imaginaries. Number 23. If the sum of the numerical coefficients of a polynomial equation equals 0, is 0, then if the coefficients adds up to 0, that means that 1 is a root. That means x minus 1 is a factor. Or it could also mean that 1 is a root, but a root is the same as a 0. A polynomial root is the same as an intercept. So 1 is a root. Find the zeros of this polynomial. So that means the zeros are the values of x that make the p. So that if you make the p of x equal to 0, they're the zeros of a polynomial. So you let this binomial equal 0. So we see x is common, so we take the x out. So we have x is equal to 0, or x squared plus 4 equals 0. X squared is negative 4. Square root of x squared is plus minus the square root of negative 4. So x is equal to plus minus. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of a negative number is an I. So the roots are 0, 2i, and a negative 2i. So if you have each of these, give yourself 3 marks. Total of 9 for that page. And we want to find the root. This is the videos, the last 2 or 3 videos. Find the roots of this quartix equal to 0. And what are the roots? Well, is it equal to 0? Yes. Is it in descending order? 4, 3, 2, 1, 0? Yes. And how many roots are there? Well, there's x to the 4th, so there's 4 roots. Maximum 4 roots. And let's see. We're going to check, is there a GCF? Is x common? No. Is 1 a root? Let's see if 1 is a root. Add up the coefficients. 1, 1, 6 is 8. Negative 1, negative 7, negative 8. 8 and negative 8 is 0. So that means 1 is a root. So I'll go 1, negative 1, negative 7, 1, and 6. And remember, they're in descending order, so everything's okay. Draw a line, bring down your 1. Multiply, 1, add, 0. Multiply, 0, add, negative 7. Multiply, negative 7, add, negative 6. Multiply, negative 6. 0 remainder. So we have one root of 1. Now we have this depressed equation here. So let's look at the possibles. So we have, let's see, we have P is 6, Q is 1. When Q is 1, so we got all the factors of 6, 1, 2, 3, and 6. Because that's a 1 divided by 1, this is not going to change. Now we have to do plus, minus, imaginaries, and total. And there are 4 roots. So there's 4 roots. Oh, that's plus minus. That's a minus there. So let's look at, you can look at this equation here, or you can look at this one, but let's look at the depressed equation. So right here, the depressed equation is x cubed, that's 4th, so this is x cubed plus 0x minus 0x squared minus 7x minus 6. And we don't worry about this change here when we're doing signs. So there's one change, only one change. We don't worry about the 0. So there's one change. Let's do the negative. So this is negative x cubed is negative. Negative 7 times negative x is a positive. And we got a negative. So when you do a negative, you got 1, 2 sign changes. So you got 2 negatives or 0 negatives. So if you have 1 positive and you have 2 negatives, you can't have 1 imaginary. So you can't have 1 imaginary. So you have 1 positive, no negatives. You can't have, you got 4 roots. So this, do I have to do the sign change? Is it positive to a 0? 1, 2, 3. Let's look up at the beginning one. See the sign changes. Probably the 0 does have to come into effect. Oh, 0 is a root. That's why the confusion is. We have 0 as a root. So 0, there's 1 0. So that means we have 1 0 and 3 of these. And there's 1 0, so there's 2 of these. There's where the 4 comes from. Because 0 is a root, then we're looking at 3 roots. And so we're not, if you look at this equation, you're not looking at the 1, 0, you're only looking at 3 roots. Because we did the 1 right away. So only looking at 3 roots. So here's the option. Okay, and we're going to try 1 is already gone. So there's 1 positive, so it must be negative left. So we try a 2 instead in 1, 0, negative 7, negative 6. And bring down to 1, 2, 2, 4, negative 3, negative 6, negative 12. No. We try a 3. And we have 1, 2, 1, 0, negative 7, negative 6. Bring down your 1, 3, 3, 9, 2, 6. 3 is a root. And we got 1 as a root, 3 is a root. Remember, 1 positive is in this one. If you checked up here, you probably get 2 positives. Let's see. 1, 2. Up here is 2 positives. There they are. But in here is only 1 positive. That's the 3. So 2 doesn't work, 3 does. So we have x squared plus 3x plus 2 equals 0. So that's x plus 2 plus 1. That's the factors of 2 are 2 and 1. X plus 2 equals 0. X is negative 2. X plus 1 is equal to 0. X is negative 1. So all the roots, write them down in order that I got them. 1. And we have a 3, negative 2, negative 1. And again, because I took the x out, then I could only look at the roots that was in this equation, which was 3, and I was going by this one up here. But because I took the x out and made 0 as a root, then there's 0 in a root of this one, and there's also, I'm saying wrong, because I took 1 out, because the sum of coefficients is 0, 1 is the root, not 0. So that didn't work. And one more to do. Hopefully this one works a little bit better, because it can get confusing. And here we go. Is it in descending order? Yes. Everything is there. Nothing left out. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And the number of roots here are 4. 4 roots again. And there's no x, GCF. And is 1 a root? Add up the coefficients. 2, no. 10, 14, and 2 is 12. No, 1 is not a root. You can't do grouping because there's 5 terms. And so now we have to do P is -2. Q is 3. So we have plus minus 1 and 2. Plus minus 1 and 3. So P over Q is plus minus 1 and 2 divided by 1 and 3. So that gives me, so divide 1 into both of these, 1 and 2. Divide 3 into both of these, you get a 1/3, 2/3. So plus minus 1, plus minus 2, plus minus 1/3, plus minus 2/3. And we have to check with positive, negative, imaginaries, Descartes' rule. And there's 4 roots, and we didn't take any x's out, so there's guaranteed to be 4. And I did the minus the last time, same thing. I did plus minus and put a plus in there. Just those silly errors that I make. So let's check the positive. No sign change, no. 1 sign change. Let's check the negative. Negative x to the 4th power is positive. Positive and positive is positive. Negative x cubed is negative. Positive times a negative is a negative. Negative x squared is a positive. Negative x times a positive is a negative. And a -2. So we got, in terms of a negative, we got 1, 2, 3. We got 3 changes in terms of the negative. So we got, there's a 3 or a 1. So 3 or 1. So there's 1 positive. When you have 3, so there's 4 altogether, so you got no imaginaries. If you have 1 positive and 1 negative, you have 2 imaginaries, make a total of 4. So we have 1 positive. 1 is not a root. So let's check the 2. We check the 2 into 3, 5, 1, 5, -2. So right now 1 is not a root because it doesn't add up. So I'm checking the 2 is a positive. So bring down your 3, multiply. You get 6. Add, you get 11. Multiply. You get 2 times 11 is 22. That gives you 23. Multiply 46. Add, you get a 51. Notice, don't work. So now I got to check. I got a positive 1, didn't work. Positive 2 didn't work. Now I got to check a 1/3. In 3, 5, 1, 5, -2. Bring down your 3. 1/3 times 3 is 1, 6. 1/3 of 6 is 2. You get a 3 when you add. 1/3 of 3 is 1. Add, you get a 6. 1/3 of 6 is 2, 0. So 1/3 is a root. 2 is not. 1 is not. So we got 1 root. Now we got to go and notice we have all positives here. So we got 1/3. And we got 1. So we're probably, let's check the negative. -1. We got this depressed equation. Now we got a 3, 6, 3. Bring down your 3, multiply negative 3, add a 3, multiply negative 3, add a 0, 0, and you get a 6. Negative 1, not a root. Okay, now we'll try negative 2. Remember, we tried negative 1. Now we're going to do negative 2 on 3, 6, 3, 6. Bring down to 3, multiply, negative 6, 0, multiply, 0, add 3. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. We got a 0 remainder. So that means negative 2 is a root. Negative 1 is not. 0 remainder. So we have 3x squared plus 0x plus 3 equals 0. So 3x squared plus 3 is equal to 0. 3x squared equals negative 3. Divide by 3, and x squared equals negative 1. Square root of x squared is plus minus the square root of a negative 1. X is equal to plus minus. Square root of 1 is 1, and because it's negative, we have an I. And so the roots are, let's go through. We got a 1/3. We have a negative 2, and we have an I and a negative I. That's the 4 roots. And again, just take your time to find them. You go through all the positive first, and then you go through all the negatives. And eventually you'll get them all by synthetic division, because the remainder got to be 0. Total of all your pages, and your total of your pages is at a 52. So put your mark score at a 52 here. Divide denominator to numerator, get a decimal, and move it 2 places right to get a percent. Hopefully your percentage is a good percent on this chapter. And like me, I make a few mistakes, so just be careful when you're working at your math. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.